In order for a business to survive, it has to have revenue. Now, this translates even to cryptocurrency. Now, I get it. Businesses, they can burn cash for a short period of time and not be profitable, but eventually they must be profitable, or eventually they end up crashing and burning. But how do you spot if a protocol just has inflationary rewards or it's actually generating revenue? Well, in today's video, I want to go over a couple of things you guys can look for and a couple of ways protocols can generate revenue, so that way you guys can figure out which projects are sustainable and have some profits coming in. So there are three different ways that a protocol can generate revenue. The first is protocol fees, the second is bribes, and the third is gas fees. There are others in addition to this, but these are the most common ones. So let's go and go over each of these. The first, protocol fees. Protocol fees, they can come in different forms depending on what type of project you have. Let's take, for example, Uniswap. This is a DEX, which is a decentralized exchange. There are swap fees involved on Uniswap. As you can see here, Uniswap has a range of different fees. They range from 0.01% all the way up to 1%. What that would mean is if I swap one token between another, I would be charged so and so fees. So let's show you guys what this looks like. As you can see here, if I'm going to make a swap on Uniswap v3, if I just wanted to swap some ETH into USDC, going through Uniswap v3's router, it's going to charge me 0.05% of a swap fee. But this doesn't go to the Uni token holders. Actually, all of this goes to the liquidity providers. So in this case, just because Uniswap does have revenue coming to the protocol or through it, it's not actually being captured by the Uniswap protocol. This is going straight to liquidity providers. So let's give you another example of another DEX. This is SushiSwap. SushiSwap, on the other hand, they charge a 0.3% fee. Now with this 0.3% swap fee, actually 0.05% goes to the Sushi token stakers. This is revenue. But just because it has revenue doesn't mean it's profitable. If you break down the sushi emissions and what it's expending, you can see here going based on the price of $1.58, and in the past 1 month period, they emitted 230 sushi tokens. If you calculate that out, that would come out to about $364,000. Now, how much revenue did they make in that time period? Well, you can see the total volume that they brought in was around $33 million. You need to go ahead and multiply this number by that 0.05%. Because remember, the sushi token holders only get 0.05% of those swap fees. So this gives you a base of 169,000. You subtract that and you can see sushi is actually losing $195,000 every single month, or at least this past month. Now, if volume is different next month and their emissions are different next month, well, of course, you have to factor that in. But for this past or the last 30 days, sushi was losing money. So just because you have revenue doesn't mean that it's profitable. In my opinion, I would rather have a protocol that is making no money and losing no money compared to a protocol that is generating revenue but losing money. As you can see here, based on the metrics, Uniswap is hand over fist killing SushiSwap. $2.11 billion in daily volume. Well, at least this day of the screenshot. SushiSwap barely 64 million, or a little over 64 million. I mean, sushi is on the decline, whereas Uni is constantly innovating, especially with concentrated liquidity, Uniswap v3, and more people are being attracted to it. However, it is missing that value capture mechanism of the Uni token. Maybe there will be a vote, but time will tell. We'll see what happens. Now, another type of fee model would be something with a yield optimization protocol. This could be through deposit fees, withdrawal fees, or performance fees. An example of this is like Yearn Finance or Beefy Finance. The Yearn Finance protocol, the Y-Fee token, doesn't have that value capture mechanism like Sushi does. So we're going to use Beefy Finance for this example. In Beefy Finance, the Beefy token, all of the revenue that is generated on the protocol goes back to the Beefy stakers. And I know you're saying to yourself, like, why would people pay deposit fees, withdrawal fees, or even performance fees? Well, with these optimization protocols, these are a type of sit it and forget it strategy. You deposit into the vaults, they auto compound, and you don't have to pay gas fees, and you don't have to go and claim the rewards every day and compound. And these are able to get a higher yield based on the amount of times they're able to compound. If you're only able to compound for 1 month or 12 times out of the year, well, the guy who's compounding daily is going to have a higher APR than you. As you can see here, if I had a 75% APR and I was compounding this 12 times out of the year, my effective APY would be 106%. However, if I was compounding this daily, this would turn into 111%. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, you're in crypto, you can find some of these higher yields, especially on some of the projects that are getting a lot of volume. So let's say, for example, this was 150%. Well, if you do a daily compounding, it would be 346. But if you're only doing monthly, it's 310%. The difference is 30% right there. And if this is being compounded multiple times that day, the yields will be even higher. So something to keep in mind. And this is an example of what it would look like on some of the vaults. As you can see, for the ST-Matic vault on Beefy Finance, the performance fee is going to be 4.5%, but there's no deposit and withdrawal fees. Some of the other vaults, they will charge a deposit and withdrawal fee. Now, with these type of protocols, what you have to keep in mind is there are expenses. They do have to pay out the gas fees every time they run the strategy, which is compounding rewards and re-putting them into the pool, as well as if there's any token emissions, if they're incentivizing liquidity on their platform. So the protocol does better at scale. So if it's just doing $100 of compounding rewards compared to 1 million, the gas fees are still going to be the same, but they're going to make more on that 1 million. Because they're paying the same amount of gas fees, and if it has the same amount of TVL or emissions going into that pool, well, it's going to be the same amount of emissions. Their profit margins are higher the more people that deposit. Now, one of the major problems with these protocols is that they're a race to the bottom. If my protocol charges you a 4% performance fee and another one comes out with a 3% fee and incentivizes users to deposit, well, I'm going to lose TVL in my protocol. The reason being is that people see that and they're like, wait, it's cheaper over there. Yes, of course, there's chances of rugs and it's not as proven. But again, for some people, they see a lower number, they will go straight to it and use that vault. Let me go ahead and give you an example of a yield compounder that was really popular back in the day. It was called AutoFarm. AutoFarm hasn't been constantly innovating and staying ahead of the game, and of course there were a couple of errors in some of their vaults which scared some people, but as you can see, their TVL is on the decline. They only have about $50 million in TVL, and as this gets lower, their profit margins also shrink. So the TLDR you want for these fee protocols is that you want one that's growing, you want one with strong revenue that is profitable, you want one that has value capture, because if it has no value capture, then the token has no utility. The protocol is great, but as a token holder, using it just for governance, not financial advice, but do what you want to do. And lastly, you want to look for one with constant innovation. If they aren't innovating, you're going to have a chart that looks like this, or like we showed you above, the chart that looks like sushi. It's constantly going down. They haven't changed much. It's the same 50-50 swap pairs, and the other products that they're developing, they don't seem to be catching on. The second way that protocols can generate revenue is with bribes. Bribes are an extremely good way for protocols to generate deep liquidity without having to pay as much. Now we're talking about other protocols in this example. As you can see here, if I wanted to get $1 worth of liquidity, I can go to Convex and spend $1 worth of bribes and get $1.44 worth of liquidity, just based on the emission from bribes. If you guys haven't heard about Curve bribes or Convex bribes, I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can check out a video to understand more on that. But the TLDR on it is that if I'm a project, I have different ways I can incentivize liquidity. I can launch my own pool and say, hey, if you pair ETH with my token, I will go ahead and pay you so and so amount of tokens. Now, this is an issue because as soon as people get my tokens from yield farming, they're incentivized to dump them to cash out in profits. So with bribes, I can say, hey, Convex, I'm willing to pay you $1,000 to anyone who votes on my pool. So what would happen is people are like, I'm going to vote on your pool because I'm going to get paid a share of that $1,000. That's how the bribes would work. So as a Convex staker, I can go ahead and vote and say, hey, I'm voting for Drake ETH pool. When I vote for Drake ETH pool, I would get the bribes that Drake protocol is paying out. So now as a Convex holder, I'm happy because I just got paid from Drake protocol. Drake protocol is happy because I just got some liquidity for my pool and it was at a cheap cost. So in addition to the protocol rewards on Convex, they would also get the bribes. This works for Curve as well, and there are several other protocols that offer these incentives. Beethoven Finance, Velodrome, Spirit Swap, just to name a few. Again, the TLDR with bribes is that protocols functioning with bribes do better at scale. So what I mean by this is if they're driving $1,000 worth of liquidity compared to $1 million, that protocol is still having that same emissions. In this example, let's just say Curve. Curve is still going to be emitting the same amount of tokens, whether it's paid to the Drake pool or it's paid to the ETH pool. So the more bribes that they have, the more money that the protocol can make because it still has the same expenses. Now, the last one has to do with gas fees. These mainly translate to different layer ones and different chains. This could be like your Avalanche, your Phantom, your Cosmos, your Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain. These are just to name a few. Now, these don't just go back to the staker. In both proof of work and proof of stake, this revenue goes back to the miners or the stakers. In Ethereum's case, however, it does have EIP 1559, so instead of all of the gas fees going back to the miners, or in this case the stakers, a portion of this is actually burned. I'll show you that later in a transaction so you guys can see what this would look like, but this is revenue for the chain. And again, this does better at scale. So whether there is 1 million different transactions going through or 1,000 different transactions for a proof of stake or even a proof of work, there are still the same amount of emissions going out on that chain to incentivize the miners to validate transactions. As you can see here, on one of the transactions, 83 cents of this gas fee was burnt. So it's literally just burned and gone. And yes, there are token emissions going for Ethereum to incentivize staking, but a portion of the gas fee also goes back to stakers. So stakers earn the inflationary rewards as well as a portion of the gas fees. And this is just a screenshot of the total amount of ETH that have been burnt. Currently, it's over 2.6 million ETH, which translates into about $8.5 billion. So let's wrap this up. These are not the only ways that a protocol can generate revenue. There are multiple ways, but these are 3 of the main ways you should look for. First is protocol fees. These are different fees that the protocol charges for using its service. Second is bribes. This can be through like Convex, Curve, Beethoven Finance, Velodrome. You can see if the protocol has bribes. Typically this is through a DEX, but it can be on other protocols as well. The TLDR is that governance token holders, they would be incentivized to vote for a certain pool, and the incentivization would be a bribe from another protocol. And the third is gas fees. This could be like on Avalanche, Optimism, Arbitrum, etc. And now that you kind of see that gas fees are a model of revenue, you can now kind of understand why Optimism and possibly Arbitrum would be doing a airdrop for their token. They would emit their token and release their token and incentivize different people to deposit into their pools. Why? Well, because it generates volume on the chain. When you generate volume on the chain, remember a portion of that goes back as revenue to the Optimism token holders. So it's a way to generate revenue. And this goes on other chains as well. So the more volume you have on a chain with these different protocols, the more money that the chain can make. But in general, I want you to remember this. If you don't understand where the yield is coming from, unfortunately, You are the yield. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you guys did, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what you guys think of protocols generating revenue. What are you guys doing in the bear? Are you guys taking this time to accumulate? Let's go ahead and hit you guys with a wisdom one-liner. Proverbs chapter 12, verses 11. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Guys, work hard. Stay strong. I know it's a bear, but now's the time to dig in and look for projects that are building. We'll see you guys in the next one.